Welcome back, folks. Today's video, I'm reclaiming an old door that come out of a house. I'm going to put it in my shed that I'm building. This door has no frame, no casing, only came with one hinge. It was in a house and this door faced west for decades, so you can see the sun has really beat up the plastic frame that holds the window in place. We'll take care of that. Be careful with that plastic that's really brittle, but we'll get it cleaned up, get it painted. When we're done, it looks really nice. So on these projects, I like to start with the part that I've never done before, or at least the part that I wanted to do the least. In this case, it is building the frame for the door, the header and the casing and everything. Never done that before, so this is my first try. And so I had the bright idea that I would start with 2x6s and rip those down, resaw them into the shape and sizes that I needed. And so the first step was to rip off the rounded corners of the 2x6s so that I could have some nice crisp edges and corners to work with. I thought I might save a few bucks in doing that, but as we find out pretty quickly here, I did not save any money because I ended up burning up my table saw and had to drop $300 for a new table saw. And in hindsight, I should have probably just bought some 1x6s, but live and learn. So my old table saw is not really liking doing this kind of cut. It is overheating. Clearly see the smoke coming out of it that I was unaware of that was coming out of it at the time. I might have smelled it, I might not have, I don't remember, but I was just trying to get through the cut. And in the end, the motor in my table saw gave up the ghost, and you can clearly see the smoke coming out the right hand side of the saw there. That saw is done. So 3 days and $300 later, my new saw came in the mail. It's a DeWalt, I think it's 8.5 or 8.25 inch blade on it. It is almost not large enough to rip the 2x6s. And I probably won't ever try that again. Left a little bit of piece here in the middle that I had to chisel out. But in the end, it turned out okay. And I got a new table saw out of the deal. The fence on this table saw is far superior to the one that I used to have. And so, ended up with a better tool after this project anyway. So, ripping the 2x6 down to the width that I need for the door jamb. And so here in the shed, I made the opening for the door 38 inches. I am building most of this shed in the initial phases. I'm building it inside my shop because it is raining. It will not stop raining. It keeps raining and raining and raining, and it does that for several more days. So anyway, so I'm doing a quick more or less just kind of piecing the walls together and doing everything that I can inside the shop. It's a very simple matter to disassemble the walls, and with the loader there on that tractor, I can pick them up and carry them around back where I'm going to eventually put this shed for final installation. So yeah, the door jambs going in. I will pull these off and paint these, but just kind of doing some test fits right now. Just tacking a few nails there to kind of hold it in place. So here's the initial rough installation. Got both sides of the door, both sides of the jambs in, got the header on. The measurements are all looking like they might work out pretty good, so we'll call that all right. So I'm going to want a outswing door, a door that swings out.
Picked up these hinges, Amazon, Home Depot, something like that. And this is what I figured would happen. The holes on them would not line up with what's in the door. This is a steel door with threaded bolt holes, screw holes, whatever. And of course they fit like that just fine. But you know, the hinge won't shut. So what I need to do is flip this hinge around, this half of the hinge. Flip that half around. All right, let me get that pin out of there. Right in the trash. I think that'll do it. So what I figured would happen, I need to squeeze that down a little bit. Is that enough? Or is it going to spring back a little bit? And yeah, it sprung back a little. So I think what I need is to see what that did for it. I think I can live with that. Yeah, that'll be fine. Let's see, those line up now. And I can screw that piece into the wall there. And then that door will open just like that. All right, crisis averted. All right. For the very first test fit, the measurements, the tape measure says that it all should work. I know I haven't mortised those hinges yet, so I've got some space that I'm going to be able to pick up from there that will free up that door so that it opens and closes freely inside the door jamb. Here I'm going to mark the depth at which the hinges will need to be mounted to the jamb. Pull the hinges off the door, mount them to the jamb. It'll be a lot easier to mount those hinges to the jamb when it doesn't have that door hanging off the side of them. So with both the top and the bottom hinges mounted, I'm going to go ahead and mount the door for the first time. All right, now that both the top and the bottom hinges are in place, installed, and the door is hanging, that makes it real easy to get the middle hinge in the right place. Just screw the hinge to the door and then screw it to the door jamb, and it is at the exact appropriate height that it needs to be to not bind the door as the door articulates, opens, and closes. And there we go, the door is mounted for the first time. It's around this point I realized that this was going to end up working pretty well. Still have some adjustments to do, but I also have to refinish the door. So both sides of the plastic grid on this door that holds the glass in place, both of them are pretty well beat up by the sun. The inside is not nearly as bad as the outside, but it clearly needs to be cleaned up and painted as well. And so I elected to take out the glass, both grids, and it's all kind of glued in there right now with some silicone that's probably 30 years old, some good stuff. Gonna have to carefully pry this plastic loose from the door, making sure that I don't crack the plastic, because obviously 30-year-old door, I can't buy that plastic anymore. Finally. So the silicone on the outside of this door with the sunshine on it got extremely hot. This whole door probably got in excess of 120, 130 degrees in these Texas summers with the sun shining on it from probably around 4 o'clock in the afternoon to probably 8 o'clock in the evening. But I was able to get all the glass out and without breaking the frames, and so I didn't do any priming. Got some good paint that doesn't require primer, and just went to town with it. I have to say it turned out pretty good in the end. I have to say that I learned by doing, and on the first grid I learned that what I really need to do is focus on the hard to get to edges and not worry too much about the overspray on the main face and on the front of the frame there. Once I get the hard to get to areas covered and taken care of, then that really left just a little bit of the rest of that frame for me to grab hold of and get it painted. So the door needs cleaning. Give me an opportunity to bring out my soap cannon, and it's connected to my pressure washer. I've got mounted to the back of my tractor. Once I got her soaked up real good, put on the pressure nozzle. I think this one's probably about a 15-degree nozzle. 2,500, 3,000 psi, I don't recall, but it cleaned up the door and cleaned up this glass pretty well. And those plastic grids, they set out overnight, and of course they've got spider webs on them already, so we get that knocked off. Try to knock a little bit of that caulk and that silicone off with the pressure washer as much as I can, get it off the glass. So the pressure washing, the soap, and is all the preparation that I did on the door. I didn't do any sanding. I might have scraped a little bit of that caulk off as best I could. This is not going on the front of a brand new home, and so it doesn't have to be perfect. All right, with the door painted, come time to do some, I think they call this casing. I would have called it facing, but it's just the trim that goes on the outside of the door. This is the part of the 2x6 that was left over after I got through resawing and building the, cutting out the jambs. This is the thin piece that I cut off. I have since pulled the jambs out of the shed frame. I brought them in here into the shop so that I could cut these mortises. I think I bought this jig from Harbor Freight probably 15 years ago. I used it one time then. I swore I'd never use it again. But I had this router sitting on the workbench and I thought, well, I've got everything. Why not go ahead and do it? So, and they turned out pretty good. So my trim is going to be brown. I had a gallon of oil base that's been sitting up for probably a couple of years, and so it needs to be mixed really well. And I'm trying to do this without making a mess. And clearly I'm running out of daylight, but it's a good time to get things done, and so I'm just going to paint in the dark, even though I can't see very well. So what I've got here are the jambs, the header, and all the casing trim. This will be the first of at least 2 coats. All right, so this is dried overnight. This is the next day. I actually think this is after it's gotten the second coat on it. And as I have clearly run out of daylight because we're in the midst of what we call daylight wasting time, this is where the clock is falling back an hour. And so it gets dark at a ridiculously early time of every day, probably 5:30, 5:45. And so I had to pick up a spotlight that works with my 20 volt DeWalt batteries. I wanted the 20 volt DeWalt stand light, but it's just stupid expensive. And so I picked up some knockoffs, and they work pretty well. The instructions say to not leave the batteries in them, or they'll cause your DeWalt batteries to run completely dead and to the point that they're unusable. And so that's the only downside, but for 3,500 lumens and seemed like about 28 bucks, I don't think I could come across a better deal. So just a couple of screws to hold the header in. All right, so it's the next day. The door jamb and header is in place. The door's going back in for the final time. And I guess I put my mortise in the wrong place. So with a little chiseling, and I couldn't find my rubber mallet, so all the chisel purists out there see me banging on this thing with a regular hammer, I'm sorry. I know that hurts y'all's feelings when I do that, but I had to use what I could find. So I was nervous about putting the glass and the grid back in. I wasn't sure how well that was going to work. That glass is really heavy and the plastic was very brittle. And so I was actually more concerned with getting that done without breaking the glass and it falling out the back. And so I didn't even think about grabbing the camera for that. But it all went back together the same way it come out. Screws on the inside. I didn't break anything. And so now the door is completely in place. I even forgot to record the installing of the deadbolt there. The door used to have a doorknob in it, but I just put a deadbolt here because those are more secure than doorknobs, and so it has a key that works on both sides. So even if somebody comes in and knocks the glass out, they won't be able to get the door open. So I just tack these door stops into place. They keep the door from swinging in too far. And so now I just need to layer them with a coat of paint. So here's the finished product. The door turned out really good with the casing, the frame, and everything. I'm excited with how this all turned out. That's going to about wrap this one up. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. And I appreciate you watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.